Live. Okay. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a new Eurosci Network discussion. Today's topic will be Macron, the Schengen Overhaul that he's proposing, and Islamist separatism. And today we have with us a very important guest who is Joana de Deus Pereira, who is a researcher at the University of South Wales in the UK, although today she's connecting from Brussels. Hello, Joana.
Hi, Diego. Good morning. How are you?
Thank you for being with us here today. This is an experiment that we are making in the Eurosci network, which is a network that brings together academics from all over the world. Currently, the Eurosci network is present in 13 countries of Europe, South America, and Africa. And although initially the Eurosci network was very focused on Europe and European issues, nowadays it tries to become a global network and to deal with global issues. The issue we are dealing with today is immigration and the overhaul of the Schengen agreement in the European Union, and in particular a proposal by the President of France, Emmanuel Macron. And we have today with us Joana de Deus Pereira, who is an expert in European Union security and also an expert in cooperation in the field of internal affairs in Europe. Okay, so I think this is sufficient introduction for now. There are 5 people who are watching now us live on YouTube. Those who are watching us, if you want, you can write your name, say hello, just to try to warm up the atmosphere. You will have an opportunity at the end of the discussion also to participate by posting your own questions. Okay, without further ado, Joana, please tell us what is this about, this Schengen overhaul. What is Schengen?
So Schengen is actually one of the biggest political achievements of the European Union, and it refers basically to a passport-free zone that covers almost all Europe, and it's used by about 400 million of EU citizens that can move as they wish within Europe. And it was thought to be one of the most important steps in the European Union construction. It started basically in 1985 with a strong will from 5 countries. And it's Schengen because it was signed in a little town in Luxembourg, where Luxembourg, Netherlands, United Kingdom, West Germany, and the Netherlands reunited to sign and to make this step forward, the free movement inside Europe. Of course, that a long 25 years have passed since then, and the countries and member states have been signing it, and especially when in 1985 during the Schengen Agreement, and when they signed it, they proposed this cooperation to. Sorry?
So Joana,
yes.
We are making tests, people are already writing on YouTube. I think this is working fine with the usual difficulties we have when we test something new. So you said that this Schengen thing, it has this name because it was an agreement signed in a town called Schengen?
Yes. Actually a little village in Luxembourg called Schengen.
So what was the initial purpose of this Schengen Agreement, and how has it evolved throughout the years?
Initially, the idea was to bolster economic freedom of movement within these 5 countries, and then easily became a true cornerstone to European integration. So in 1995, the Schengen Agreement entered into force, and since then, all the member state countries have been adhering to Schengen until 1997, when it was made mandatory that all the countries entering the European Union would be obliged to also abide by Schengen.
And can you please tell us how many countries are part of Schengen? If is it a European Union agreement or?
Yes, no. So Schengen has presently 26 countries. It was within those 26 countries, 22 are European member states. Of course, because some of the other countries, neighboring countries, have borders with European Union member states, also signed bilateral agreements, entering therefore into Schengen. It's the case of Switzerland, Denmark, Norway, and Iceland. So they are also part of Schengen. Presently, Romania, Bulgaria, and Croatia are still under the cooperation and verification mechanism. So they are not still full members of the Schengen zone.
How about Ireland? Is Ireland a member of Schengen?
No, Ireland and the United Kingdom, they opted to be out of the agreement. And prefer to keep their own borders and to be only part of the common European market.
Okay, so how about Cyprus?
Cyprus as well. So Cyprus has a particularity of dividing the border with Turkey, and therefore it has also a special treatment under Schengen for that matter.
Okay, so of the countries of the EU, the ones that are not members are Ireland,
UK, and
UK that is no longer member of the EU, yeah. Cyprus, Croatia, Romania, and Bulgaria.
Exactly.
Okay. Good. So the if it's something that is brings together many EU countries, but not all of them, and at the same time, I don't know if there are in Schengen some countries who are not members of the EU. Probably not, right?
For example, Switzerland is precisely in the middle of Europe and surrounded by European member states, and it does not belong to neither to the European Union, of course.
Okay, so my question is how is technically this cooperation agreed if it's something that it is within the European Union, but it does not bring together all the members? Does it have special procedures for decision making?
It does, and so until 1997, it was purely optional to adhere to Schengen. From 97 onwards, it was mandatory to adhere to Schengen, excluding here the question of Ireland and the United Kingdom. So, as a cornerstone of the European Union, all the member states adhering to it after 1997 were obliged to not only agree to all the laws and rules according to the treaties, but also they would have to abide to the commitments ruled by the European Union. So basically what happens with Romania and Bulgaria, and because they are under the cooperation and verification mechanism, that is basically a safeguard measure, is that they did not fulfill all the commitments previewed by the treaty to be considered as eligible to be part of Schengen.
I think I understand. So please, today's topic is a hot topic. Macron, Schengen Overhaul, Islamic separatism. So why is Schengen now on the news? What are the current challenges of Schengen? Why is it now on many European newspapers they discuss about Schengen and about this proposal by Macron? What has changed?
So we have to go back. So I said that Schengen is a cornerstone, and it was pivotal to strengthen the political European Union in this sense. But the truth is that Schengen has always been over a constant stress because of what implicates. If we look at it from the good perspective, it's obviously that the freedom of movement of people, services, and coin, it's fantastic because you no longer have borders. Perhaps you remember as well as I do, and you are Spanish and I'm Portuguese, that if you wanted to cross the border, you would have to show your passport. And this was not so long ago. This was exactly 25 years ago. So it changed immensely, not only the economic structure and dynamism and life of the European Union, but also it changed the life of the European Union member states and its peoples, because you are now allowed to work wherever you want and to go easily without showing your passport, etc. But the truth is, Schengen did not foresee, for example, unexpected events. It did preview expected events. For example, the borders have been inserted, for example, when Lisbon received the NATO summit, when France received the European Football Cup. So these were all foreseeable events, but it was not prepared for two major events that drastically changed the way member states and the European Union itself saw Schengen. First, and I would say not two, but three. So first one, I would say that terrorist attacks in Europe, in European soil, drastically changed the way, at least they were the first alert to what this borderless Europe could mean in terms of security. Just thinking of the fact that terrorists could move across borders was already the first alert. So you had, when the first attack in Bataclan occurred, Schengen was lifted. It happened again after in Brussels upon the Brussels attacks, and this was foreseeable because according to Article 29, when member states are over extreme security pressure, they can suspend the Schengen Agreement.
But okay, just 1 second.
Yeah.
Can you please tell us a little bit more about this attack, this terrorist attack on Bataclan? I think it was like a disco or something like that in France, right?
Yes, it was a series of attacks, actually. So the first attack was at Charlie Hebdo. It was in November, if I'm not wrong. And then it was succeeded by the Bataclan. It was a show room, a spectacle room, where there was a concert happening, and where was a mass shooting and many people died. And only 1 month after, it was the Brussels bombing at the airport and at Malbec station. So this was highly, highly disruptive and put Schengen on the spotlight of discussion. So, but here it was not foreseeable, but at least it was already predicted in the Article 29 that if member states were under extreme security threat, they could suspend Schengen. But then COVID happened. And you know as well as I do that COVID was not in anyone's predictions. And in truth, it was with COVID that for the first time in Schengen's history that the external borders of Schengen were closed. So when the WHO, the World Health Organization, said publicly that Europe was at the spotlight and was actually the heart of the peak of COVID-19 pandemic, this urged the European Union to a common response to close the external borders. But before, even before, you probably remember that Italy closed its borders during the first peak of the pandemic completely unilaterally. It happens that to suspend Schengen, member states should consult the Council, and it was never consulted. They were completely unilaterally suspended by
So please allow me to interrupt. So this what you're just saying now is that Schengen had certain kind of rules for exceptional circumstances that allowed to close the borders or to take exceptional measures.
Exactly.
But that those rules did not work very well in the case of the Bataclan crisis and in the case of the pandemic?
Well, in the case of the terrorist attacks, they worked because they were somehow already, of course, in the law, you didn't have mention to terrorists, but to terrorist attacks itself, like a very purpose and focus problem. But you had on Article 29 that as a last resort, member states could close their external borders, but external borders and the internal border suspension was actually not very clearly stated in the Schengen Agreement. The truth is, Europe was not prepared to respond to terrorist attacks, namely in terms of policy, and the treaties were not prepared to deal with terrorist attacks. Of course, if you don't have a long history, because you have to think of the European Union as a project of peace, isn't it? So you have to think that over 70 years, Europe has not suffered any war if you put aside, if you exclude the Balkans conflict. Europe has been living in peace. So the European project was actually a healing process, a healing project, and was thought to heal and to reunite, not to divide. So what we have been seeing in terms of policy from the European Union is that it has been strongly triggered by events that are disruptive and that in a certain way oblige the European Union to respond at a policy level. This happened with terrorist attacks, this happened with COVID, and this happened with a very, very sensitive issue, the so-called migration wave, when the countries started to build fences like Hungary, like Austria and Croatia. So this is very delicate. And of course,
let's discuss a little bit about this. You mentioned then already two challenges, this terrorist challenge and also the pandemic, but now you are discussing also a major challenge, this migration crisis in Hungary. So my question is about this. In which way did the recent migration crisis affect Schengen?
It affected deeply. So we have a problem, and this has been in the spotlight since 2015, the peak of the so-called migration wave, because of two main reasons. There has been a connection between migration and terrorism, what has been called amongst scholars the migration terrorism nexus. And the problem is that populist and nationalist movements have been trying to connect migrants and the so-called migration wave to a boom in terrorist activities. This is one part of the issue that is obviously extremely debatable because you do not have real fact connections between migrants and terrorists. Secondly, because, for example, in the case of Hungary and Viktor Orbán's narrative, for example, it has been alleged that migrants are stealing jobs, migrants are stealing the future of youth in Hungary, including, for example, he has been promoting free IVF fertilizations for Hungarian couples just to keep the Hungarian spirit and nationality and breed, between commas, of Hungarians. So this has also a very, very strong political side and has deeply and intrinsic connections with the populist and far-right movements that are rising in Europe and that do not have migrants inside.
Okay, just the people who are watching us now on YouTube, thank you very much. Andrei Prikop, Paula Michalkut, Olha, I don't know, I cannot read Cyrillic alphabet. Smilski Stefan, Rotaru Dragus Andrei, Olga Codreanu, Cosmin Maxim, Ana Maria Corne, Alex Tanasuca, Sergiu, Catalin, Benjamin. Mulțumesc tuturor pentru participare. Puteți să puneți întrebări. You can ask your questions on YouTube. It's better you ask them now so that there's some latency, not very much on YouTube, but it's better that you ask them with time so that I have time to read them and I can pass them to Joana de Deus Pereira, researcher at the University of South Wales in the UK. Okay, I just wanted to say, Joana, that what you just presented in the beginning, it was not very controversial, but now we are getting into controversial issues such as this idea, the link between migration and terrorism. And in the title of today's discussion, it's Macron's Schengen Overhaul and Islamist separatism. So this new term coined by Macron, Islamist separatism, can you please explain what it means and why some people are angry about the use of this term that includes within it Islam, and it may create some international conflicts?
Yes, so you know as well as I do, and probably most of the people listening to us, that there is a very high number of Muslims living in France. So this is a very sensitive issue. And this all started, if we go back again, to the Charlie Hebdo attack, where the first caricature of Mahomet appeared in one of their publications, leading to a sanguinary attack at Charlie Hebdo, a satiric journal in Paris. Macron, 2 weeks ago, he gave an interview to Al Jazeera where he said that we need to promote freedom of religion, but we need to also promote the values of the Republic, and bearing in mind that France is open to everyone, but to live according to the values of the Republic. Let's underline here that one of the values of the Republic is laicite, laicism. So you can have or not have a religion, you can profess your religion, but you have to live according to not only the French laws, but also the European laws and the European values, and living accordingly to the democratic inscription and values of the European Union and also France. So this is actually a very, very sensitive issue, because Islam itself, it's a very dogmatic religion, and it is highly complicated to balance between what is the democratic values of the Republic and Islam. For example, there have been many caricatures of Jesus Christ, and none of them led to a beheading of a French national in French territory, in European Union territory. And this is very sensitive. So he was basically trying to call into attention that everyone is free to have their religion, as long as it doesn't cross the red line of extremism, of stepping on the democratic values of the Republic and of the European Union. So here there has been an effort, and of course the European Union somehow backed it backed Emmanuel Macron. And after the attacks in Vienna, Nice, and in Paris, they sent a joint statement after the council, where they expressed, and I will read it right now, some unshakable principles of unity and solidarity against all forces of terrorism. And amongst these objectives, there are upholding freedom, act with determination, uphold common values and European way of life. And here, European way of life, as also you remember, but I will refresh, for example, our students and viewers. It was highly polemic when the president of the Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, issued it and sent a letter to her vice president, the Commission, Margaret Schinas, that he would be the speaker of the European way of life. And European way of life is actually an embodiment of a pluralist Europe, where all the religions are allowed, and where the freedom to follow or not to follow any religion should be a key principle. So after this lone wolf attacks that happened recently this year, in this joint statement, it was basically issued that the EU approach should be an holistic one. And instead of putting more fire into an already very burning and hot issue, it was said that Europe should protect all Europeans against religious instrumentalization, and instead of focusing on radicalization, it should focus on the root causes of it, and it should promote education and training, especially amongst the religious leaders, to implement these democratic values. At the same time, that they accept their freedom of religion. Of course, that we cannot misunderstand a beheading of Samuel Paty with all the Pacific Islamic community, that is the majority. We cannot take a tree for the whole forest. Okay.
So my question now is, Macron is proposing a Schengen overhaul. Overhaul is not a light reform. Overhaul means turning everything upside down and rebuilding it almost. So my question is, why does Schengen need an overhaul now?
So Schengen, as I said before, it's intensively under pressure. Under pressure because of migration, under pressure because of terrorism, under pressure because of COVID-19. So actually COVID was, and this unilateral suspension of Schengen borders was actually the perfect motive to put on the table this discussion about a profound reform of Schengen. This profound reform of Schengen, as Macron said, that the Schengen area that was a data acquired from European construction gave us free movement within the internal borders with the promise of protection and security. And according to him, the protection of security was not actually guaranteed. So this is basically the argument that he's using. So we were promised as member states that we could move freely inside the European Union with security. So whenever this security, from the point that the security was broken, and namely with the terrorist attacks in Paris, the initial ones, and in Brussels, because you have to remember that the terrorists, they crossed the border twice between France and Belgium, for example. So from the moment this security was not ensured, from the moment the mechanisms did not work to protect the European citizens, it opened obviously a breach to this discussion. And
Just one note about what you just said. So essentially, the idea then is focused on security, that the Schengen Agreement has worked for the freedom of movement of people. This has been good for the economy, but the premise that it should do this with security is what has failed. So this brings security to the forefront. Yes. And you are now a member of the Monnet network in Counter-Terrorism. Yes. It's a recently approved network in counter-terrorism that brings together academics from all over the world to discuss this important topic at the University of South Wales in the UK. So, Joana, could you please tell us a little bit more about this new Monnet network?
So the Monnet network, it's funded by Erasmus+. This network in particular has 14 members, 14 universities, and the aim is to promote the research of EU counterterrorism in Europe. So it has a very structured a structure basis, and the objective is to exchange knowledge exchange and produce knowledge within this network of 14 members. It is led by Professor Christian Kaunet and the International Center for Policy and Security, where I have the privilege to work. And it will be launched next 15th, 16th, and 17th of December at a big event, a big kickoff high-level event with the presence of the United Nations, Europol, the European External Action, and many renowned academic scholars that have dedicated their lives to the study of European counterterrorism.
So you are planning a very big launching event for mid-December with the presence of prominent academics, but also prominent policymakers from different institutions. Please tell us a little bit more about that. Who is invited to this launching event?
So we will have in the first day at the plenary session, we will have Rector Federica Mogherini, former High Representative Vice President of the European Commission, sharing the virtual floor with Sir Geraldine King, former EU Commissioner for European Security, with Assistant Secretary General Michel Konix, the head of the Counterterrorism Directorate at the United Nations. In that same day, in the afternoon, we will have the principal advisor, Dr. to the Counterterrorism Coordinator, Gilles de Kerkhoff, Dr. Christian Hohn. The second day we will have, for the first time, and because he just entered into duty, the director of the European Counterterrorism Center of Europol, Mr. Claudio Galzerano. And on the afternoon panel, we will also have a very, very interesting panel on financing terrorism, who will have we'll have as keynote speaker Dr. Jacob Hans Kindler, and also Professor Boaz Ganor from IDC Israel. And the latest panel will be on gender and security, and it will have as a keynote speaker Georgia Holmer, the director and head of the counterterrorism unit at OECE. On the third day, we will have as keynote speaker in the morning former executive director of Europol, Sir Rob Wainwright, and it will be followed by a special lecture with Professor Jörg Monar, the father of the area of justice and security. We will also have in the morning the head of the Sahel mission, Philippe Rio, to talk about the EU partnership in Africa. And closing, we will have very interesting sessions on the importance of policing and terrorism, on counterterrorism in Europe.
This is impressive. So my question is, so you are organizing all that from the University of South Wales in the UK?
Yes. Yes. We had a very precise objective when we received the Jean Monnet funding for the research network on EU counterterrorism, and that was to create an excellence hub and nest for researching EU counterterrorism and counterterrorism in general. And so this is our main objective, not only to put the International Center of Policing and Security in the place where it deserves, where it deserves under the leadership of Professor Christian Kaunert and with the partnership of all the 14 members, but also and this is I think it should be underlined. This is the first Jean Monnet exclusively dedicated to the study of European counterterrorism, and considering the latest events in Europe, the rising of far right, the rising of lone wolf attacks, And also because this is very, very time-wise, there will be the launch by the European Commission of the new European agenda on counterterrorism just the days before or even during the kickoff itself. So this is a tip for the ones that are viewing. So it will be launched during these days. It will be an excellent opportunity to refresh and to revive the debate around European counterterrorism.
Okay, so now we have discussed Schengen, the challenges for Schengen, and we have come to this idea of terrorism, migration, and what could be done? What is I don't know if Macron, he talked about an overhaul, but has he proposed any particular measures?
So after his speech, and when he used the word overall, it was actually at the border between France and Spain in the Pyrenees, but on the French side, of course. And after this, he had like a mini summit with Sebastian Kurz, Prime Minister of Austria, Ursula von der Leyen and Angela Merkel over the phone and using the new technologies, and they all agreed that Schengen should be profoundly revised. We cannot forget that this profound revision is intimately linked with the use of technology, the reinforcement of Frontex operations at the external borders of the Union, and to this idea that that Fortress Europe that has been lately linked to the work of Frontex has dramatically changed the way we saw Schengen, or at least the way we were used to live Schengen.
So this is probably an ambitious reform, but I think it will not be something immediate, probably. No. And I have heard that the schedule, that Macron's schedule is to discuss this during 2021 and to get it approved in the beginning of 2022, when France will have the rotating presidency of the Council of the EU.
Exactly.
But my question now, these proposals now, at this particular point in time, do they have anything to do with the electoral cycle in France?
Of course, we cannot detach it from it. You have to understand, and the people listening to us, that Macron is obviously reflecting the populist and nationalist voices that are getting louder and louder and louder, not only in France with the Front National, but also in Europe. So the rise of the far right and the use of the migration argument and the terrorism argument to uphold Schengen, or even to suspend Schengen forever, it has to be dealt with velvet hands. And of course, there is a capitalization on the political side of this argument. Of course, foreseeing the French elections, that the next French elections. So yes, of course.
Okay, so I think this is a very interesting topic. We have many viewers from Hungary. Many people from Hungary follow our channel because we deal with controversial issues that are very relevant for Hungary. So do you think that in a way this move by Macron is getting France closer to Hungary?
All the nationalists, I would not say France closer to Hungary, But I would say that some of Macron's arguments are to calm down and to control Front National in France, inside France. I would never link Macron's government or Macron's policy with Viktor Orban's, because it has nothing to do. But obviously, there's a link here, and the political opportunity that he cannot avoid. Because at this stage, it is very important to balance the disruptive voices inside France with his own political will. So this is a balanced speech for the French, but also for outside. And Macron wants to have a say in Europe. He wants to have a strong say in Europe. And France has been, for the last 15 years, a bit aside from the strong group of countries that have a say in defense. So we have seen that Germany has obviously the lead here, and France wants desperately to have a say and to become again a member state on the spotlight, who changes the political agenda and who has a say in the political agenda.
Okay, we need to. We have one question now from the audience on YouTube. Andrei Prikop asked this question regarding the next French presidential elections. Is there any chance that Marine Le Pen will not enter in the second round due to the use of this nationalist rhetoric by Macron?
We cannot predict that. Actually, last elections were a mirror of what is really unpredictable. I think that if we have another series of lone wolf attacks in France or European soil, this is a possibility. Whenever this happens, there is a huge capitalization from the far right parties to bring forward again more restrictive measures inside Europe. And latest polls have shown that Marine Le Pen is actually very, 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 very close to Macron. So I think it was in Politico that last week or 2 weeks ago that showed that Marine Le Pen had 25% of vote intention and Macron only 26%. So I think that the numbers speak for themselves. And that is why Macron is so intensively trying to get in, on one hand, closer to the far right electorate, while trying to maintain his previous position. So we'll see. But as I said before, many of the political action and obviously the policy agenda in Europe has been strongly marked by events. So it has been triggered by events. So it's something that we do not know until another trigger event.
Okay, so basically, the answer to the question, if I understood it correctly, is that it's true that Macron's rhetoric is designed to fight Marine Le Pen, but there's no chance that Marine Le Pen will not make it to the second round.
Yes. Yeah.
Good. Okay. We need to bring this live broadcast to a close on YouTube, but we will continue now the discussion on Zoom with the students from Alexandru Ioan Cuza University in Iași, in Romania, who have been attending on YouTube, and many of them are registered in the course in which this lecture has been integrated. So we will continue the discussion now by Zoom, restricted with those students. And if you will be available, Joanna, you will be able to meet them. I will send you the link now and just say hello to them.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me. And once again, I'll have to congratulate you for the fantastic network that you have settled over the years, and the fantastic job that you do connecting all these students all over Europe and Africa, if I'm not wrong, and Brazil. So it is absolutely fantastic, the work that you do with Rossi, and I have to take my hat to you, because this is absolutely unbelievable, especially because you started this way before COVID-19. So for the majority of the people watching us, this is probably a new thing, but we have to say that you started Eurosi way before COVID, way before the age of webinars, and you were actually before the times, and it's a terrific job, the one that you do. So thank you so much for inviting me. I look forward to see you at the kickoff of the conference, and I'm now available for the students at Zoom. Thank you so much for watching.
Okay, thank you. We have another question now on YouTube, but we will answer this on Zoom already, because we need to bring this broadcast to a close. It cannot be too long. Thank you all for participating. Thank you, Joanna, for your generosity of offering this discussion for students at Alexandru Ioan Cuza University, and for the broader audience of the Eurosci Network channel on YouTube. Thank you very much, and we continue now on Zoom.